The rain-slicked streets of New York City glistened under the neon glow. But my heart was a storm of its own, churning with betrayal. 3 months ago, my ex, Tyler, had humiliated me at a rooftop gala, exposing our breakup to a crowd of Manhattan elites with a cruel laugh and a new guy on his arm. Now, standing outside a sleek skyscraper, I clutched a plan as sharp as the wind cutting through my jacket: revenge. I wasn't alone in this. Julian Voss, the infamously cold CEO of Voss Enterprises, had his own score to settle with Tyler, who'd sabotaged a critical business deal out of spite. Julian's proposal was simple: fake date him to make Tyler jealous, ruin his social standing, and walk away unscathed. I agreed, not because I trusted Julian's icy charm, but because I wanted Tyler to feel the sting I'd carried for months. The elevator to Julian's penthouse office felt like a cage, each ding tightening the knot in my chest. At 25, I, Ethan Carter, was nobody, a barista with a sketchbook full of dreams and a heart still bruised from Tyler's betrayal. Julian, on the other hand, was a legend at 32, sharp suits, sharper tongue, and a reputation for crushing anyone who crossed him. Why he needed me? A nobody. For this charade was beyond me. But the promise of revenge was enough to silence my doubts. The door slid open, and there he was, leaning against a glass desk, his silhouette framed by the glittering city below. Julian's pale blue eyes locked onto mine, assessing me like a predator sizing up prey. "Ethan," he said, voice smooth as whiskey but cold as the marble floor. "You're late." "I'm here now," I shot back, forcing confidence I didn't feel. My sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, a stark contrast to his tailored perfection. "So, how does this work?" We hold hands, post some photos, and Tyler loses his mind. Julian's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "It's not that simple. Tyler thrives on attention. We need to be convincing, public, bold, undeniable. You'll move into my apartment for the next month. We'll attend galas, dinners, every high-profile event in this city. Tyler will see us, and he'll break." My stomach flipped. Move in with you. The idea of sharing space with this man whose every word felt like a calculated strike was daunting. But the image of Tyler's smug face crumbling kept me grounded. "Fine. But no funny business. This is fake, right?" His gaze flickered. Unreadable. "Entirely. I don't do attachments. Ethan. You'd do well to remember that." We sealed the deal with a handshake, his grip firm and cool, like the man himself. Over the next week, I packed a bag and moved into his Upper East Side apartment, a sterile palace of glass and steel that felt more like a museum than a home. Julian was rarely there, buried in meetings or barking orders over the phone. But when he was, his presence was suffocating. He'd critique my posture, my clothes, even the way I laughed, always with that detached tone, like I was a project to be molded. Yet, there were moments that threw me off. One night, as I sketched in his living room, he paused by the couch, glancing at my drawing of the Brooklyn Bridge. "You're not terrible," he said, almost to himself, before walking away. It was the closest thing to a compliment I'd gotten, and it left me staring after him, confused. Our first public appearance was a charity gala at the Met. Julian had me fitted for a tuxedo that cost more than my rent, and as we stepped out of the limo, his hand rested lightly on my lower back. The touch sent a jolt through me, but I played my part, smiling for the cameras as whispers rippled through the crowd. Tyler was there, his eyes narrowing when he saw us. I leaned into Julian, my heart pounding not entirely from the act. "You're doing well," Julian murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "Keep it up, and Tyler will be begging for your attention by dessert." I nodded, but my focus wavered. Julian's arm around me felt too natural, his cologne too intoxicating. I reminded myself this was a game, a means to an end. But as the night wore on, with Tyler's jealous glares burning holes in us, I caught Julian watching Minute with calculation, but with something softer, fleeting, unguarded. By the end of the week, our relationship was the talk of the city. Social media buzzed with photos of us, Julian's arm slung casually over my shoulder at a rooftop bar, my laugh caught mid-frame at a Broadway show. Tyler's texts started flooding my phone, pleading for a chance to talk. I should have felt triumphant, but instead, I felt a pang of guilt. Julian's plan was working, but I was starting to dread the day it would end. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of playing the perfect couple, we sat on his balcony overlooking Central Park. The city hummed below, but up here, it was just us. I sipped the wine he'd poured, my guard down for the first time in weeks. "Why do you hate Tyler so much?" I asked, breaking the silence. "This feels personal for you, too." Julian's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "He cost me a deal worth millions. But more than that, he betrayed my trust. I don't forgive easily. Ethan." I studied him, the sharp lines of his face softened by the moonlight. For the first time, I saw past the cold CEO to the man beneath, someone who'd been hurt, just like me. "You don't have to be so guarded," I said quietly. "Not with me." He turned, his gaze piercing. "And you think you're different? This is a transaction, Ethan. Don't mistake it for something it's not." His words stung, but I didn't back down. "Maybe it started that way, but you're not as heartless as you pretend to be." For a moment, he said nothing, just stared at me with an intensity that made my pulse race. Then he stood, retreating inside without a word, leaving me alone with the city lights and a heart that was starting to betray me. The weeks blurred into a whirlwind of glitz and tension. Julian and I were everywhere: brunch at the plaza, front row seats at Fashion Week, stolen glances at art gallery openings. Each event was a performance, choreographed to perfection, but the lines between acting and feeling were blurring. Tyler's desperation grew, his messages turning from pleas to accusations. But I barely noticed. My world was shrinking to the space between Julian's calculated touches and the rare moments when his guard slipped. One night, at a rooftop party in Soho, the air crackled with energy. Julian's hand rested on mine as we posed for photos, his thumb brushing my knuckles in a way that felt too real. The crowd buzzed, but I only saw him, his sharp jawline, the way his eyes softened when he thought no one was watching. Tyler was there, too, his face a mask of fury as he watched us dance under the string lights. I should have reveled in his misery, but all I could think about was how Julian's hand felt in mine, steady and warm. "You're distracted," Julian said later, as we stood by the railing, the city sprawling beneath us. His voice was low, almost accusing, but his eyes searched mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I'm not," I lied, sipping my drink to avoid his gaze. "Just tired of pretending." He raised an eyebrow, his usual cool demeanor faltering. Pretending. You're the one who wanted this. Ethan. Don't tell me you're getting cold feet. It's not that. I hesitated, the words heavy on my tongue. It's just, this doesn't feel as fake as it should. The admission hung between us, raw and dangerous. Julian's expression didn't change, but his silence spoke volumes. Before he could respond, Tyler stormed over, his face flushed with alcohol and rage. You think you can humiliate me like this? He spat, glaring at me. And you, boss, using him to get to me. Pathetic. Julian stepped forward, his presence towering. Careful, Tyler. You're not the only one who can play dirty. The confrontation drew eyes, but Julian didn't flinch. He took my hand, pulling me away, his grip tight but not unkind. We left the party in silence, the car ride back to his apartment thick with unspoken words. When we reached his place, I expected him to retreat as usual, but instead, he poured us both a drink and sat across from me on the leather couch. Why did you say that? He asked, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. About it not feeling fake. I swallowed, my heart pounding. Because it's true. I know this started as a game, but I see you, Julian. The real you, not the CEO who scares everyone away. And I think you see me, too. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his eyes locked on mine. You don't know what you're asking for, Ethan. I'm not built for this love. Relationships. Whatever you think this is. I'll only hurt you. Then why do you keep looking at me like that? I challenged, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. Like you're afraid to let me in, but don't want to let me go. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The city lights cast shadows across his face, highlighting the conflict I'd only glimpsed before. You're too good for this, Ethan, he said finally, his voice raw. Too good for me. I agreed to this for revenge. But now, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. My chest tightened. I stood, crossing the room to stand beside him. Then stop pretending. Just for one moment. Be honest with me. He turned, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in his eyes raw. Unguarded. Real. Before I could think, he closed the distance between us, his lips crashing into mine. The kiss was desperate. Hungry. Like he'd been holding back for weeks. My hands found his shoulders, pulling him closer. And for a moment, the world disappeared. When we broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. This wasn't supposed to happen. He whispered. You were supposed to be a means to an end. And now? I asked, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer, but his hand lingered on my cheek, his touch saying what his words couldn't. From that night, everything changed. We still played our parts in public, but in private, the walls between us crumbled. Late-night talks on his balcony became our sanctuary, where he'd share fragments of his pasta distant father, a betrayal that hardened him. I told him about my dreams of being an artist, the insecurities Tyler had exploited. With every conversation, I fell harder, but a nagging fear lingered. What happened when the plan ended? Tyler's desperation peaked at a tech summit where Julian was a keynote speaker. He cornered me in a hallway, his voice low and venomous. You think you've won, Julian will toss you aside when he's done with you. He doesn't care about anyone. I wanted to argue, but doubt crept in. Julian's world was one of power and control that I really fit in it. That night, I confronted him, the weight of my feelings spilling out. Is this real, Julian? Or am I just part of the game? He looked at me, his expression torn. I don't know how to do this, Ethan, but I know I don't want to lose you. His words were a lifeline, but the fear remained. We were standing on the edge of something real, but the plan that brought us together was a ticking clock, and I wasn't sure we could outrun it. The final week of our agreement loomed like a storm cloud. Julian and I had crossed a line we couldn't uncross, but the endgame was still in motion. Tyler's social standing was crumbling. His invitations to elite events had dried up. His new boyfriend had left him, and the city's gossip mill churned with stories of his downfall. Our plan had worked, but victory felt hollow. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted Julian, and the thought of losing him terrified me. We attended one last gala, a glittering affair at the Waldorf Astoria. Julian was magnetic, his speech captivating the room, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was our final act. As we danced, his hand steady on my waist, I whispered, "What happens after tonight?" He stiffened, his eyes flickering with something I couldn't read. "We ended, Ethan. That was always the deal." My heart sank, but I nodded, forcing a smile. The dance floor spun around us, the music a cruel reminder of how fleeting this moment was. Tyler watched from the sidelines, his defeat written in his slumped shoulders. But it didn't matter. The man I'd come to love was slipping away, and I couldn't stop it. After the gala, we returned to his apartment, the silence between us deafening. I packed my bag, each item a reminder of the life we'd built. However briefly, Julian stood by the window, his back to me, his shoulders tense. "You don't have to go tonight," he said, his voice barely audible. "But you said it's over," I replied, my throat tight. "You got what you wanted. Tyler's ruined. So what's left?" He turned, his eyes blazing with a mix of anger and desperation. "You think this was just about Tyler? You think I kissed you, held you, because of some petty revenge? Damn it, Ethan, I'm in love with you." The words hit me like a tidal wave, stealing my breath. I stepped toward him, my voice trembling. "Then why are you letting me go?" "Because I'm terrified," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I've spent my life building walls, Ethan. You tore them down, and I don't know how to live without them. But I can't lose you." Tears stung my eyes as I closed the distance between us, my hands cupping his face. "Then don't. We don't have to follow the plan anymore. We can choose Thysis." He kissed me then, softer this time, like a promise. When we pulled apart, he smiled a real, unguarded smile that made my heart ache. "You're impossible," he murmured. "But you're mine." The next morning, we faced the world together, no longer as a fake couple, but as something real. Tyler's downfall faded into the background, irrelevant now. We moved forward, navigating the complexities of Julian's world and my dreams. But we did it together. I started showcasing my art, Julian cheering me on from the front row of my first gallery show. He learned to let go of his need for control, and I learned to trust and love again. Our story began with revenge, But it ended with redemption not just for us, but for the parts of ourselves we'd thought were broken. In a city built on ambition and secrets, we found something honest, something worth fighting for. And as we stood on his balcony, the skyline stretching before us, I knew we'd rewritten our ending. One kiss, one truth, one choice at a time.